What's your oh fuck, I am an asshole moment? Someone I hadn't talked to in years came up to me and started telling me about how they haven't been doing that good lately and that they found out they have cancer. Well, I was at work and only half paying attention, so after he stopped talking I said that's good. Haven't seen him since. Years ago I went into a Hot Topic and as I was at the register, the girl working started telling me about all the new Metallica shirts they had gotten. For some reason, I told her I wasn't really into wearing band shirts anymore. Which was mostly true. And even though I didn't mean to, it came out sounding really snobbish. At the time, I thought her reaction was kinda strange, even accounting for my accidental condescension. Shortly after I left the store I remembered I was wearing an in shirt. In early high school. Late 90s. So if you got a girl's number it was the house number. I called a girl's house and her dad answered. She was out. But I noticed his speech was a bit slow and slurred. Next day at school I mentioned I had called and asked if her dad had been drinking. Well, turns out he didn't drink much since his stroke. Still feel awful about that. I was driving down a road and a lot of people were honking and yelling at me on the street. I got angry and flipped a bunch of people off and honked back. At the end of the street I saw a one-way sign and realized I was going in the wrong direction. I was making fun of an old guy I'd seen outside our school at a basketball tournament to some friends in the locker room. He looked and talked like Farmer Fran from The Waterboy. Turned out to be the dad of one of the guys I was talking to. Still can't even think of that movie without it bringing up endless amounts of shame. I was drunk at a pub and shouted for the band to play Free Bird. They stopped in the middle of the song they were playing, started up Free Bird and called me up on stage to sing it. I froze. Forgot all the lyrics and made an absolute ass of myself. Props to that band though. Broke up with my first girlfriend who was really attached to me. Just by ignoring her. I feel so bad. I was just a kid, but that was a harsh treatment. Posting on Reddit sometimes makes me reread my poop and realize I'm being an asshole. I don't do it on purpose. But I think years of reading and writing posts on the internet has tainted my tone. What's your name? I asked. Shara. Trying to be playful. Oh cool. Like Sarah with a lisp. I have a lisp. My name is Sarah. Oof. When you fight with your friend over something, leave. Then realize they were right. When I realize the reason I've lost so many friends is that I'm so poopty at getting back to people. 8th grade. Speech class. A kid had been absent a few days. And when he came back, I started razzing him a bit. We were friendly, but not friends. So I felt okay kidding around, claiming he was just pretending to be sick to get out of class. That sort of thing. Nothing really mean. Though. He took it for a bit. Then turned. Looked me dead in the eyes. And said in the flattest voice, "No. My mother died." And turned back around. If God had struck me dead with a bolt of lightning when I stood before him at the pearly gates, I'd have said yeah. Fair enough. Edit. Wow. Thanks for all the rewards. I had no idea this was such a common experience. This happened about 35 years ago for me. So while it doesn't keep me up at night, it is one of those little reminders to not treat everything as an opportunity for joking. A little personal growth. You know? As a bit of an epilogue, I went to my 30th high school reunion. And who should be there but dead mom guy from speech class. We actually hung out and talked a while. His wife and I got along great. We're Facebook friends. And he seems like a pretty cool guy. But I bet you can all guess what memory I have not and will not be bringing up. Ever. I was in the army. Making fun of a guy. Said he couldn't even get a medal for something in the Special Olympics. He then pointed out his daughter was in the Special Olympics. I profusely apologized. And he accepted. But it still keeps me awake at night. This entire year. Been recovering from my divorce last year, and it forced me to take a hard, honest look at myself and all the poop I used to do and how I actually treated those around me. A lot of tough to swallow pills. But a lot of much needed reflection taken place. For years I used the same thing happened to me line whenever someone opened up to me. Instead of just shutting up and listening to them. But yeah. Working on it. Edit. Gosh. I was rewarded for being an ass to other people. Thank you, but also I'm conflicted about it. I developed a pretty serious drinking problem. And in one day everyone finally had enough. I got fired. Kicked out of my apartment. I was left utterly alone. And homeless. With $2,000. And a 1986 Volvo station wagon. It was coordinated between everyone in my life. And it freaking hurt. But I wouldn't take any of it back for the world. Things are far better now. But that was the sort of life event that is supposed to change you. And I'll let it do so for the better. At the movies once it was just me and friends and one other group sitting in front. There was a guy in front that kept slurping on an icy really loudly. Like he just really wanted to get every last drop. After a few minutes I got really agitated and made a super obnoxious and loud slurping sound to make them aware that it was annoying me. Literally as soon as I did it I saw that it was a disabled man and his parents and he had a suction tube. I was so ashamed I walked out of the theater quietly whispering to them, "I'm so sorry." I never went back in. When I was 16, I worked in a retail store and was in charge of the fitting room. You see people come in and out so much that you sometimes don't pay too close attention. A woman walked in with their preteen kid, so I pointed towards the ladies' side. I only side glanced and saw her kid was wearing a baseball cap with their head lowered. And really baggy clothes. I immediately assumed the kid was a boy and pointed towards the men's side. They looked super awkward and uncomfortable before their mother corrected me and said she's my daughter. I apologized profusely and their mom decided to nag her by saying, "See? With the clothes you wear. People think you're a boy." I felt even more terrible that I put her in this weird conversation with her mom. Edit. Well. I woke up to a few dozen nice messages that made me feel better about this. Thank you. And for anyone wondering, this happened in 2007 in New England. Back then, non-binary wasn't exactly discussed or regularly talked about among teenagers, so at 16, I definitely panicked because I didn't want to offend customers and possibly get fired. If this had happened today, I probably wouldn't have said anything at all and just pointed in whichever direction they'd like to go. Good to know we can all agree that the mother was the real PP in this situation. I asked two black ladies at work what language they were speaking. I am really big into languages and I felt like I hadn't heard the one they were speaking before. English. They were speaking English and they just both happened to have really thick accents. I blamed my fart on a mentally challenged boy in 5th grade. I told my friend that she shouldn't use medication for her mental illness because I was convinced she could just use sheer will to get through it. It was an ass move to make her second guess getting professional help to address her mental health issues. I wish I just instead offered support instead of trying to fix it when she mentioned the side effects. When I had no idea what I was talking about. This was when I was a teenager and thought I knew everything. Edit. Just wanted to add that I offered we face it together. That we would find the root of why she felt so anxious, depressed, and we'd squash it. I thought that medication was temporary and wouldn't help in the long run. Yet the assistance of a 16-year-old with no medical license could. ? I just didn't want my friend to suffer, but it was so wrong to try to substitute a medical professional. My girlfriend recently dumped me. Looking around my room and seeing all the things they bought me and being reminded of all the things they did for me and then noticing I hardly did anything in return. I rang and paid for a mowing service, and when the guy rocked up, I started telling him that I can't mow the lawn myself anymore as my injured ankle would play up and hurt for the rest of the day. Then he got out of the car and I realized he was an amputee from the knee down. At HS graduation, a friend of mine was a foreign exchange student from Italy, and her parents were at the ceremony. I went up to them and just shouted, "Hi. I love Italians. IDKY. I just felt like a douchebag in that moment. One day while I was walking on the street, some kids kicked a ball in my direction. I was going to pass it back, but I thought one of the kids closer would just get it. I decided to keep walking. I looked back at the kid and I could see the look of disappointment on his face. I felt like biggest ass on the planet for a few days. I still feel bad thinking about it. My buddy wanted to set me up with a new coworker of his. I got to his apartment early and started getting drunk with his roommate. He called and said they were going to be late. He said, "She's a bigger girl. Don't mention her weight." He had told me this previously as well. By the time they showed up, I was pretty drunk and I wanted to make a good impression. I said, "You're not nearly as fat as they said you were." She turned around and fled. I used to tend bar. I was very busy at a freestanding bar. I was literally surrounded. I went to wait on the next customer. I made eye contact and asked what I could get him as I turned to throw something away. He gave no response. I asked again as I started wiping up a spot someone had vacated. No response. This kept going a couple more times. As customers were building up, I turned with a bit of attitude and said something to the effect of, "Sir, I'm getting deeper in the weeds and all these other people are getting pissed. You need to order or move aside so others can." He then informed me that he was deafened as I kept turning away. He couldn't read my lips. Oh frick. I am an asshole. Every time my kid asks to try what I'm eating, I always say that it's spicy and he won't like it, so I don't have to share. Nearly every tantrum I had as a kid. A lady told me she was hospitalized 4 months after she fell asleep at the wheel and drove her car off a cliff. She said she woke up right when the wheels went over. And I asked her, was it worth it? She stared at me, wondering what I meant. So I continued. Now you know what it's like to fly in a car. When I realized I picked a side that benefited me more over the one which would be the correct side multiple times in arguments, fights and every other situation where such decision can be made. I was running a bit late for work one afternoon, and traffic was oddly heavy for part of the drive. All these cars were driving like 15 under the speed limit. As soon as the road opened to 2 lanes, I slammed on the gas pedal and flew around this ridiculously slow line of cars. Until I got to the car in the front driving so slow and realized it wasn't just some slow asshole. It was a hearse and I just flew past a funeral procession. In my defense, everyone I'd seen before had their hazards on and little flags on each car, so this sort of thing doesn't happen. But I felt awful. While hungover at a breakfast diner, the waitress asked me if I wanted a box for my food. I said sure. And she asked what size of box I needed. Without thinking, I say I don't know. I'm not a box expert. Immediately felt like an ass after that. I grew up fairly poor, and as a kid, the concept of money didn't mean much to me. I just knew we had less things than the other kids in my class. So when the Nintendo started getting super popular, I asked my mum for one. She obviously refused since we couldn't afford it, but apparently, later on that evening I had drawn a picture of a Nintendo along with a comic strip of me and my mum playing a game on it together. Apparently she had stayed up that entire night crying because she had felt guilty about not being able to afford it, as my dad told me years later. I honked my horn at a car that stopped and blocked the road, only for a really old frail woman to slowly get out and very slowly get across to a food shop. This was during the last lockdown, and was probably the only way she could get food. I still lie awake wishing I could say sorry, but it wasn't possible. teacher here. Walked into my co-worker's classroom, loudly and obnoxiously mocking a man from the district who is supposed to help us with instruction and provide support. She ushers me out of her room immediately and starts laughing. Cause he was sitting in there to observe her next class. I walked into Home Depot bathroom one evening just before close. As soon as I went in, I heard a sad voice from the stall say, "Hello? Can you get me some toilet paper?" I proceeded to slowly back out, hop in my car and go home. I don't know why I did it, but I choose my path that day.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.